It is a great San Diego sports tradition, parsing through another ugly Padres breakup every 2 years. Now is that time, Derek Togerson. We are doing it once again, and we have to decide who's the Padres manager we'll be replacing in 2027 when we do this all over again. It is the On Fire podcast. He is Derek Togerson. I am Darnay Tripp. Pleased to be joining you on a Thursday afternoon after a surprisingly eventful few days in the world of the San Diego Padres. How are you, Derek?
I'm great. There's nothing to see here. It's fantastic.
Everything's good.
Everything's fine. Everything's awesome. We have nothing to worry about, really. It's the best.
It's funny because that's almost the vibe that you get hearing AJ Preller talk about it. Like, granted, some of the stuff that's come out, John Heyman, Kevin Acee, the rumblings, was after Preller spoke on Tuesday, but he never seems fazed by any of this. It's just like another day in the life, replacing another manager, a little bit of upheaval in the clubhouse. Life goes on.
Yeah, but you could talk to AJ and you can be like, all right, listen. So, an alien spaceship just fell on your house and it destroyed everything. And you'd be like, yeah, well, we just got to try and figure out how to, build the foundation back. And, if I'll find a spot to kind of kick it here and then see if I can get some of my paraphernalia in there. But, we're looking for organizational depth. And it would literally nothing phases him. A shark could walk out of the ocean and sit on his front porch and have a conversation with him and ask him to coffee. And AJ would be like, yeah, so I talked to him a little bit and, wondered if he could, hit a curveball. And it was wrath and just it's not going to work out. He never changes.
No. Yeah, he's definitely steady in that regard, and he's had to be. He's had to build up. I don't know if scar tissue is the right word, but some patience and resilience as it comes to these manners, because it always seems to end up on our front door, Derek. And we're discussing it once again, and it's the type of offseason we're quite familiar with, and so. Let's run it back, and we'll see who ends up carrying the torch forward. And you have some ideas. There's been some names that have popped up, not necessarily directly related to the Padres, but as possibilities. So we'll discuss it again. Lots to get into. It is the On Fire podcast. Appreciate OG's the sponsor of On Fire. Thanks to all they do for On Fire and the NBC7 sports team. You need a place to catch college football on Saturdays, NFL on Sundays. NBA is about to get started. NHL is rolling. OG's one of their many San Diego County locations. A great place to do it. Great menu. Always doing specials. New menu items, great beer list, good place to hang out, have a good meal, and catch a game. So thanks to OGs and all they do for us. Without further ado, the welcome music. It's the On Fire podcast brought to you by NBC7. He is Derek Togerson. I am Darnay Tripp. It is a Thursday afternoon, and the Padres are looking for a new manager. The surprising news Monday, and heard from AJ Preller Tuesday, the development since, and sadly, kind of a familiar type of situation. Things go south with a manager after a successful season. There was the health stuff. It looks like it was maybe more so due to some friction in the clubhouse with the coaching staff, and Mike Shildt, for one reason or another, decided I've about had it. It's time to move on, head back to North Carolina, catch my breath, and see what life presents going forward. As we sit here a few days later, Derek, what is your kind of 30,000 foot view on this whole situation and the end of another short-lived managerial era, this one for Mike Shildt?
We're on to Cincinnati. There we go. We're on to Cincinnati.
Who is Cincinnati in this case?
That's the problem. We've got to find that out. We're on to the next thing. It's, for those of you who don't know, that is the famous Bill Belichick line about not wanting to talk about anything except what's coming up next. I don't know. It's this we could talk ad nauseum about what happened and why it happened and what it didn't do and who did what and why this didn't work and that didn't work out. It's AJ Preller is going to get an extension, so he is going to be around. He's scouting department is going to be around. Eric Rubner is going to be around. So it'd be an exercise in futility for us to sit here and go, well, where's the problem coming? We got to deal with what we know is going to happen, right? And what we know is going to happen is we're going to know who's going to be in the front office, and we know who's going to be, for the most part, on the roster, at least the big pieces of it. So now we got to work around that and figure out who's going to be the person moving forward. Because obviously, I mean, Mike Shildt did a fantastic job. He was 42 games over 500 or something like that in his 2 seasons here, which is tremendous. The most successful 2-year run in San Diego Padres history. And he didn't want to do it no more. And that's fine. That's perfectly his right. He was fed up. He was burned out. He was upset. He was frustrated. Whatever it is, whatever the word is that Mike Shildt was, that's where he is now. And he's no longer here. And nobody knows whose fault it is. We can go down in whatever rabbit hole you want to trying to figure that out. The bottom line is we got to move forward now. So that's kind of where my head is. I wish Mike well. I'm kind of glad I don't have to be the bad guy, as we kind of hinted at it last week, Darnay. Like, great regular season manager. Didn't do squat in the postseason. Made a lot of really bad decisions in the postseason. So maybe the Padres – in some way, and again, this is not to go kick dirt on somebody's grave. I love Mike. We had some really great conversations. Maybe they need somebody different in the postseason. It's like we always used to say with the Chargers, get Marty Schottenheimer to coach a regular season, and Pete Carroll takes over in the postseason. They'll win the Super Bowl every single year. You know, that's that didn't happen, obviously, but I think maybe a new voice, maybe a new approach, maybe it's good at this point.
This all strikes me as so strange. And I think to your point, I don't know how heartbroken AJ Preller is overall. As he said, he was getting lunch with Mike after his Zoom on Tuesday. So it seems like things are okay between those two. How many situations, I'm sure there are some, but have we come across just in sports in general where a coach who wasn't particularly old, who had some success, who had a chance to have another successful season, just decides, I'm sick of this place, I'm getting out of here. It's not a totally normal thing. And of course it happens to the San Diego Padres. It just strikes me as very strange. And, sadly, I guess there are some parallels. I think with Melvin, it was kind of more so the Melvin Preller dynamic, and then a chance for him to go home. And so each of these instances, were unique in kind of their own way. I just think, how much was it? If it really was like the health thing, I could completely understand, Mike Shildt make the decision that he made. If it was really about like, I don't like the people I'm working with, I don't like having full say and worrying about hurting people's feelings, and what was the quote that he had to AC, having to please everybody all the time, I just don't feel like dealing with it. That to me strikes me as like a little bit lame, maybe a lot of bit lame, especially for like the grit squad, winners find solutions guy, that like, you're just going to quit. Like, that's it, because you can't have your way.
How do you interpret that quote?
The quote about him being tired of having to please
everybody all the time, right?
I guess I interpret that as there being friction there being some responsibility on his regard to have to kind of mitigate that and make things cool with everybody, and there being differing opinions in the clubhouse in terms of how things are supposed to go. And I think we saw this season, we've dealt with it just in our interactions, his interactions with reporters and things getting contentious. We saw it with the way he handled the lineup this year. It's like he has his way and he wants to stick with it. I think there are parallels between what happened in St. Louis and now what happened here in San Diego. And I think we all in some way struggle with that friction. I think some people, in terms of the larger conversation, I think AJ Preller is comfortable with the conflict. And I think maybe more comfortable with the conflict than other people in the organization are or have been. Mike Shildt, I think maybe isn't so comfortable with having that. And he wants to be able to have his word be the rule and people fall in line and just that be that. That wasn't the case. I think that caused him some stress. Along with the expectations of the job and this and that, and the rigors, the day-to-day grind of it, and just felt like, okay, I'm good. I'm gonna kind of take a breather here.
What I wonder about that is who are the people he's trying to keep happy all the time, right? Because again, you got how many people in the front office, and then how many people, you have 48, 47, 49, 50 players you're going to be dealing with throughout the course of a season. And then your coaching staff, you're talking about 70 people, right? So for the more or less 70 people that you're dealing with, that you have to really be
Yeah,
responsible for keeping happy, right?
he
Now,
said
again,
there's 80 people, and a high percentage of those 80 people I got along great with, and that was part of the AC's piece too. Is like very supportive of some people. It wasn't just like toxic across the board. Sorry.
yeah. So, but that's what I'm getting at here is, okay, you can put 80 people in a room, you're not going to get along with all of them. You're just not. There's some people you're gonna clash with a little bit. You're not going to see eye to eye with a little bit. For him to get to the point where he is, I'm out, I can't deal with this crap any longer, that's a major problem. Because if you're talking about out of 80 people, let's say you get along with 90% of them, right? That means you got 8 people that you got to work on your relationship with. If those 8 people have so much say or are so belligerent that you are to the point where you're like, I no longer want to be the manager of a team that is talented enough to win a World Series, I'd rather just go away, then there are massive issues inside the Padres organization that need to be addressed, need to be ferreted out and gotten rid of ASAP. I don't know who those personalities are. I do know that if you look at what's happened with Andy Green, Jace Tingler, Bob Melvin, but mostly Bob Melvin and Mike Shildt, with a little bit of Tingler because he obviously completely lost control of the clubhouse. The people who are the common denominators are AJ Preller, Manny Machado, Fernando Tatis Jr., Jake Cronenworth. I doubt Jake Cronenworth is the problem here. Jake is just going about his way. Throw him out. So if you're looking for a common thread through all these things, you could probably narrow down to who these people who are the big issue makers are. And honestly, I don't know if it's coming from the top or coming from the bottom. I don't know. But I mean, and again, I'm certainly not here to say this person is to blame or these are the only 3 people that it could possibly be. If you're looking at commonalities and you're going to start an investigation somewhere, you're going to look to narrow down the suspect pool. That's where I'm starting to narrow down my suspect pool.
Yeah, and I think there's certainly something to that. I mean, the AJ Preller piece, especially through and after Bob Melvin, now with Mike Shildt. Again, it seemed like those two, like it's not so much a Preller issue and a Shildt issue in terms of the way they work together and the expectations, and they've both talked about each other in a complementary fashion, just in terms of how much they work and they're involved and they're constant, yada yada yada. So they seem to vibe well there, more so than Preller and Melvin did. It sounds, again, just in terms of what we've heard to this point, it's not necessarily with the players like it was with Bob Melvin and having to deal with Josh Hader, having to deal with Blake Snell. There was the Juan Soto piece of it as well. It sounds like it's the coaching, like there were members of the coaching staff, and again, we don't know who they are, but members of the coaching staff that were fed up with Shildt, and it sounded like that was the case in St. Louis as well. And so there's kind of a common thread as far as Shildt goes in, again, having a way he wants things done, as any manager head coach would, and having a short patience when those things aren't going the way that he expects them to. And so it's hard for us to know, did his coaches need to fall in line? Or was he unreasonable in how he handled those situations? It also sounded like there were issues with support staff. It's like, I don't know. I have a tough time, like with the clubhouse staff and support staff, like you're having issues with them. Like that seems a little bit, but you do make a good point in that, I think there is a certain amount of stress that comes with working with AJ Preller. There is a certain amount of stress that comes with managing Manny Machado, managing Fernando Tatis Jr. That adds to all this. What is, I think, tricky to figure out is like, what was the main cause for all this, as opposed to what was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back?
Which is why I hope it's not a health issue. You can certainly see it being. I'm hoping it's straight up burnout, because Shilt's a junkie. He really is. He's around baseball. He lives baseball. Baseball is as much a part of him as hair. Like it's woven into him. It's part of his DNA.
Which he says he has less of now because of this job.
Yeah. Which is, by the way, Shilt's only 7 years older than me.
He's 57.
Yeah, right. Either he's aged a lot, as we talked about Bob Melvin, or I look great, or probably both.
You look great,
It's
Derek.
definitely both.
You work out a lot.
Yeah, it's definitely both. But it's one of those where it's like, he kind of saw it at the end. And I was on a text thread with you guys, and I was like, I was with the team a lot the last couple of weeks, and even in Chicago. And I was thinking, like, I was going back through all the interactions that we had. I'm like, did I miss something? Were there signs here that maybe I should have noticed at the time, thinking, man, he's looking like he might be at the end of his rope, or he might be fed up, or this is the end of it. And I can't think of a thing. I can't think he wasn't leaning one way or another. He wasn't acting like, man, I can't do this. I don't want to deal with this. He was as complimentary as ever. Like, there was nothing. The only thing I can think of is, and I didn't see it until I rewatched the end of game 3, because I was down on the field. I didn't see the TV broadcast. The look on Shilt's face after that final out, where he's kind of sat there,
just blank
and looked. When I saw that, it struck me as, he's thinking right now, that's the last out of my managerial career, at least here. Like, it looks like a man who that moment meant more than, even as big as the end of a series or the end of a season is. That looked like it had real weight to it. So maybe he did know all the way back then, and just hit it really well, or I just simply didn't pick up on any of this.
And like, how could you? He said that he started considering retirement in August. So this was something that was rattling around his head for a couple months before the season ended. And, and I don't want to discount the health piece. I'm sure that's a part of it. If it is mostly about the conflict and the inability to kind of deal with that healthily, and just kind of getting fed up with it, and then just kind of quitting, that doesn't leave a very good taste in my mouth. I mean, I think if you look across professional sports, I think coaching in general is hard and stressful, and there's lots of conflict and disagreements and this and that. And, you have to figure out how to deal with it. And maybe one way you deal with it is, this guy in the staff that I'm not getting along with, he's out. We're done with him. There was the piece in the AC write-up that said that they wanted him to do some work in the off season, and how he handles his staff and how he handles the media. And so maybe that was part of it. He's like, I don't feel like I need to be doing, training on, like, media training and relationship workshops. Like, I'm not dealing with that. But this guy that preached grinding and grit squad and winners find solutions and all that, to then be like, I quit, I'm done here. Aside from the health piece, unless it was truly like, I'm going to keel over and die if I don't get out of here, I wish you the best, and I wish you good health and a happy future. If it's just about, like, I'm tired of this and I can't deal with it anymore, I'm done, that to me reflects very, very poorly.
Unless, to play devil's advocate, that grit squad attitude that he praises so often, when he sees it, is more the exception to the Padres ethos than the rule. And he doesn't see them as being in his image of somebody who is going to grind it out every single day and just keep coming after you in the postseason and do anything that they can to try and win. Maybe that's what he's hinting at. It could be that it's not so much he is not demonstrating what he preaches, it's that he doesn't see what he preaches being demonstrated enough in the people around him. That is also about, given the way that the Padres have limped out of the playoffs the last 2 years, especially offensively, I think that's a very valid possibility.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. I wonder what the future now holds for him. I could certainly see him being kind of a behind the scenes guy, player development. Maybe he wants to be a minor league manager where there aren't the expectations and there is more of that player development piece. He loves working with players and helping out players. And maybe he achieved his dream with St. Louis. It went south. He was glowing about having a second chance with the Padres. And then maybe felt like, I'm feeling like a lot of the same stuff that I dealt with in St. Louis. Maybe this is part of the job that I'm just not crazy about. And he wants to go back to, just working behind the scenes, helping guys out, helping them kind of improve and reach their dreams and all that. But I do wonder, like, is anybody going to be if he does have major league managerial aspirations again? I wonder if anybody gives him much consideration, given that two stops now went south. There were some common threads. He he backed out, whether it was health or otherwise. Um, I that doesn't reflect now. On the flip side, he only ever wins 90 games. He gets to the playoffs. He had some success there. So, yeah, you take the good with the bad, maybe go into it thinking, okay, things could get a little bit strange. And maybe that informs how a club, um, sets things up around Mike Shildt in terms of who he hires and giving him free reign and this and that. Um, but I don't think he leaves this situation, with the best Q score, so to speak, in terms of the outside perception of Mike Shildt after all this.
I think a year away does a lot. Or Mike McCarthy got another job, even as badly as things ended in Green Bay, and with Aaron Rodgers saying nasty things about him, he got another job with the Cowboys. A lot of these guys. North Turner got another job, for God's sake. It's, you you always find somebody who says, "Hey, I really liked that guy, and he was really good with that crew. I can." It's like how women look at men, or that Taylor Swift song. I can fix him. I know I can. I see the potential. I'm going to make this happen. He'll be the best for me. If someone could very well make that same mistake, or maybe they're right. Who knows? Maybe Shildt goes and joins the Mets and takes them to the World Series. Who the hell knows? I have no idea. But what I do know is if he ends up managing in the minor leagues somewhere, then he will be my favorite person of all time, because it's awfully damn hard to go from San Diego to Johnson City. You do that, you are love of the game. And that's all you are, is you just love the game at the most grassroots of levels. You're just going to go back and minor and skip in AA and kick it in San Antonio. That's more power to him if that's what he actually ends up doing.
Condolences to the hardworking local reporters in Johnson City and San Antonio. Got to deal with that guy.
Oh yeah, that also reminds me. Always take it with a grain of salt anything that Kevin Acee writes at the end of a season, because his ego is very, very easily bruised, and he will hit guys on the way out. He's done it his entire career with the Chargers, with the Padres. He will air out personal grievances if someone has taken a shot at him, and he will very much do that publicly, and that thing will be tainted in a certain way if he has a grudge against somebody. So always take these things with a grain of salt when Acee is involved.
Well, I do think, Shildt got into it with a lot of reporters. I had at least one awkward exchange with him.
Yeah.
And, a lot of them just, I think what was weird, it's like, okay, this happens with coaches. You understand that. But so many of them happened out of the blue when the question wasn't necessarily, you know, aggressive or negative, and he kind of took it in that direction, and things just sort of got weird. And to me, it was just like, okay, I can 1000% see this happening with somebody he works far more closely with, and that getting really grating, because those interactions, I think, with a lot of beat reporters and people around the clubhouse, you just got kind of tired of it. Like, you just can't, you're trying to ask a normal, perfectly reasonable question, and he's getting his defenses up and getting weird about it, when it's actually related to your job and how the team performs, and you're in it more closely on a day-to-day basis. I can certainly see how those relationships get uncomfortable and go sour.
Yeah, but it's like it's kind of like they always talk about. It's kind of like being around your family. Like you get to know somebody and you're around them. I mean, beat writers talk to Mike Shildt twice a day for 162 games. And that doesn't include spring training. You're talking about 400 something interviews with a guy throughout the course of a season. It's like you get to know them really, really well. So eventually, at some point, you talk to somebody 400 times a year, you're probably at some point going to rub each other the wrong way about something. You just let it go. You realize, oh, we're off on that day. Hey, man, didn't mean anything by that. Okay, I've done that with plenty of guys. Like, hey, man, listen, let me explain to you the context. What I was asking. Oh, okay, cool, thanks. Like that's all you need to do.
Yeah, I do think it was more commonplace with Shildt than it had been with Melvin and Tingler, and I think even Andy Green. It like I said, it just kind of came out of the blue. Like when you're covering a team, like okay, things are going to get potentially uncomfortable here. They're playing poorly, this or that. With Shildt, again, it was just so random. It's like, why are you being defensive about this? It doesn't have to be this way. And that to me was the difference. It's like, when you're getting into a potentially uncomfortable interaction with a head coach or a manager, it just came out of the blue with Shildt and came around more often. I don't know, maybe that wasn't his favorite part of the job. And again, in considering what he wants to do long term, maybe that factors into it. It's like, I'm sick of having to answer these guys' questions before and after every single game, every single day, because that is a part of it, and it will certainly get exhausting. It just seemed to be a bit more of a thing with Shildt, and like as far as to kind of, if you want to button up this part of it and get to now moving forward onto Cincinnati, finally. I do think that Preller because like he was asked about this by AC, and I'm sure AC had this piece in his mind when he asked these questions to Preller Tuesday before his piece came out, just about like people in the building, anything that might have led to this. And it might have actually been Marty that asked a more pointed question about like his coaching staff and AJ. And we've heard AJ say this sort of thing before. Hey, there's conflict, high performance environments. You're going to run into this sort of thing. There's going to be a disagreement. It gets heated, but everybody moves forward with a common goal in mind, yada, yada, yada. And again, there's been a few instances where this friction has boiled over and it's become too much for people to handle. And I do wonder if AJ maybe has more of either an appetite or a patience for this type of friction than other people around him. And maybe that's a bit of a blind spot because these things continue to kind of come up. And as we look forward, like we do want to avoid this in 2 more years. We don't necessarily want this to happen every 2 years. And maybe one way to avoid that is like figure out, okay, what is like a healthy level of friction that maybe doesn't go beyond that to the point where people are like, I can't take this atmosphere anymore.
It's just being respectful of each other as humans. It's just like any other interaction. That's all it is listen, I understand you have a job to do. You understand I have a job to do. Let's be respectful of one another. If we do have an issue, we'll talk about it. It's basic human, it's sociology 101. That's all it has to be. So, and if Mike doesn't understand that, or I guarantee Kevin doesn't understand that, you don't get there, want to play by those rules or adhere to that part of basic human interaction, the contract we have with one another as people, then you're going to have problems.
And they have. Okay, Derek, we can move on to Cincinnati. I know you have some thoughts. I think you've put some on the page, so to speak, in terms of who moves this thing forward. I'll take it whatever direction you want.
Bruce Bochy. End of story. End of story. Done. I can guarantee you, Boach was sitting out on a golf course when his phone started cranking. As soon as all the Shildt stuff does happen, this is where I fall on this, Darnay, and tell me how crazy I am. How often do you have on the open market a 4-time World Series champion who already has a relationship with your organization in your city and is loved by the fan base? How often does that person show up?
Not often.
It never happens. Don't outthink the room on this one. I know AJ's talking about we want somebody who's going to be long-term and be able to take us through the next long era of Padres baseball. That Bochy's 70. That's not what he's going to offer. What he's going to offer is again, 2 to 3 years of extremely high level baseball with a core that's ready to win now. I see no downside here. I see no downside here. What say you?
See a downside. I wouldn't say I see a downside. Um, I think the question is, I think if it's you making the decision, certainly. It gets a little more complicated when it's AJ Preller making the decision. And I think we know AJ Preller wants a certain type of guy that probably wants to do the job a certain type of way and interact with him in a certain manner. Um, do those things line up? I also assume Bruce Bochy has probably heard a good amount about the Padres organization, how things have handled, how things have gone under AJ Preller, and he might have some questions as well. And
Yeah.
while I think it would certainly or could potentially be a match made in heaven and a great fit, and I think in thinking about the prospect of going forward with another managerial search, I'm like, it's such a drag, and I have a tough time like manufacturing the excitement about some new manager, and spring training's going to roll around and have to ask all these questions and do these stories about what makes this guy different and why they're going to be more successful and this and that. And we've just done it over and over and over.
And
We've done
with
it with
Boch,
Bob.
it's baked in. It's
Well,
this,
and
like if AJ does this, he can't lose because it makes all the sense in the world. Like
and
you're not gambling on a young guy, you're not gambling on a retread who hasn't done it, who has never had success. This is a first ballot Hall of Famer who was the only person who was a member of both Padres World Series teams.
And so I think what I was eventually getting to is yes, all of that, and Bochy is kind of the one that like moves the needle a little bit, rather
Yes.
than like maybe AJ Ellis will be a great manager one day. Maybe Scott Service will do great in his second go around. Maybe Ryan Flaherty will be awesome down the road. But none of those guys, just like it's just another guy. No disrespect to any of them, but just sort of like another guy. At least sitting here in this moment, Bruce Bochy is not just another guy when it comes to his track record and his bond with the city. And there are certain other names I'm sure we'll get to that are not just other guys that I think, I'm not going to sit here and guarantee, okay, this is the guy, especially Bochy at 70 years old. This is a 5 to 10 year pact that's going to bring success unlike any we've ever seen in Padres history. Who knows how that goes, but at least gives you like a little bit more excitement, curiosity about how things could go, maybe a little bit more optimism because of obviously Bochy's pedigree.
Okay. So you're talking about, so Ruben Niebla's out. That's a guy I would nominate. I would elevate in a heartbeat. The only bad thing about
Sure.
this
Yeah.
is you lose him as
I'm
your
down.
pitching coach. So he might be a victim of his own success there. Plus, I don't know if Ruben would be. I know Ruben, he would make a fantastic manager.
I'm 100% on board with Ruben Niebla.
Yeah,
I think.
love the man. I just don't know if he would be. I've asked him about this. I don't know if he kind of skated it because he's very respectful. I don't know if he has a desire to be a big league manager or not. So I'm like Darren Balsley for years. I have no desire to be I'm a pitching coach. I am what I am. I love it. I want to go. No announced promotions for the manager's job. All right, Mr. Chip Rocks, that's certainly viable. That's valid. You bring up Scott Service. Scott Service had a winning record as the Mariners manager, and when he left, they got better. So that's fact. I would have serious reservations about him. Ryan Flaherty, hell no. Just no. No. Remember, he was the offensive coordinator, whatever the heck they called him in 2023,
it was
and
terrible.
they did nothing. You're going to give that guy another shot with the same group of players, basically? What's the definition of insanity? Plus, we had to deal with them in press conferences. I need somebody with a personality and a pulse.
Yeah,
Flaherty's a great bench coach, not skipper material. Better lieutenant than a general. Some people are just like that. I'm not trying to no knock on Flash. I don't see him having the personality to be a big league manager. So you're talking about guys who have maybe not done it before. Craig Albernaz is the guy to keep an eye on. He's the Guardians associate manager with Stephen Vogt. They gave him that title because he was a finalist for the White Sox and Marlins job last year. Declined the Marlins job, pulled his name out of there. Will Venable, obviously, Padres former outfielder, got the White Sox job. He's like, I'm going to come back for one more year on the bench in Cleveland. Very much known as a high energy players kind of guy who also commands respect, makes guys get stuff done, analytical mind plus player development kind of guy. That's a guy to absolutely look at, absolutely talk to. Craig Albernaz is a guy to keep an eye on. One name I have not heard yet, and I know this is kind of a wild card out there, Mark Prior, Dodgers pitching coach, San Diego native, Uni High, now Cathedral Catholic High School graduate. Had his pitching career cut short by the slew of arms on the Dusty Baker hill of ruined careers with Kerry Wood and then a bunch of other guys. Was actually with the Padres when he retired for several years. He was a minor league pitching coordinator, also in their front office and player development before the Dodgers hired him away. I would absolutely give Mark Prior a look. Plus, he brings down all that information and knowledge of what the Dodgers have been doing all these years. Hell yes. Bring a San Diegan down to run the Padres. I would have no problem with Prior whatsoever.
Slap in the face to Ruben Niebla, Derek.
I'm saying if you're not going to promote from within.
I am.
If you're going to bring in a pitching coach, Ruben's my first choice.
Yeah. And I agree. I should say I am not opposed at all to Ruben Niebla. Again, not knowing his level of interest, assuming that, he's spent enough time, on top step of the dugout alongside guys like Melvin and Shildt to, he can do the job. He can navigate 9 innings and hand somebody off, in terms of or hand off the pitching duties to somebody else. Be as involved as he needs to be to make sure that keeps moving along. I'm less concerned there. I know that, pitching coach to manager isn't the traditional path necessarily, but I would be 100% in support of giving Ruben Niebla a shot there. Another thing that when I think of Ruben Niebla, I don't know if you saw this. You were at the game, so you may or may not have. But on the broadcast, they caught like a 12-second or longer embrace between Ruben Niebla and Manny Machado after they clinched against the Brewers. Mm-hmm. Like a long, tightly clinched embrace between the two of them that did not feel like a normal hug. And so that made me wonder, I wonder how close those guys are. Like, what is that relationship like?
Manny loves him. Yeah.
And that's gotta be part of it. Not only do you want Manny to love them, but you want Manny to respect them. I wonder with Ryan Flaherty, I know he's got history with Manny and he's been around Manny and Tatis. Like, do those guys respect him though enough to fall in line with his directives and what he needs? If Ruben Niebla has that command of those guys, and look, I think having a Spanish speaking manager, like maybe that's a good thing. We had Jace Tingler, a Latino manager. I don't think that's the worst thing. There are other names, former players that I'm sure will come up as well that fit that mold that I think could be a valuable trait or characteristic. And Niebla has probably been the most impactful coach on the staff, including the manager in his 4 years in San Diego. And so I think he's earned it from that standpoint. And so if you're going to give me if you're going to ask for a short list, 3 to 5 guys, Ruben Niebla is absolutely on that list for me. I think he's earned it. Again, we don't know his level of interest, but also in the sake of continuity, because there's this constant churn of managers, you move a guy who's been in the program for 4 years, maybe that keeps it from feeling like you're hitting reset all over again.
I like it. I would sign off on Ruben in a heartbeat.
What about Albert Pujols?
Right, 451 says, I like Albert Pujols to work with Tatis Jr., Machado, etc. Albert Pujols is an interesting case. Don't know his managerial background. Obviously, if you're talking about a guy who has respect around the game, especially among Latin American players, it's going to be hard to find a dude who fits that more to a T than Albert Pujols does. Not sure his personality, obvious. And Mike Shildt talked glowingly of him. He loved the guy. Always very respectful. Obviously, seems like a good dude. Don't know about in-game decision making, yada yada. Don't know about that. Certainly would not hurt to talk to him. I'm not opposed to bringing in, one of the only guys that had 700 home runs in his career to come in and work with an offense that has largely struggled for the most part. If you want to talk about former Cardinals, how about Yadier Molina? Yadi is, catchers typically are looked very fondly upon when it comes to managerial candidates because they see the game kind of from the inside out. They have to be in both camps, pitching and hitting. They just kind of get it. So I could absolutely see Yadi Molina, again, a guy who is, as far as I'm concerned, a first ballot Hall of Fame catching talent. No idea if he wants to be a manager or not, but that's looking in that kind of mold of guys who are recent players who could come in and command respect to the room and probably do a pretty good job. Yadi's certainly on that list.
This from Mike Rodriguez, who, according to his bio, MLB insider, broadcaster, former analyst for Chicago Cubs in Spanish. Looks like he's broken some news in the past. He even got a shout out from Jeff Passan. According to my sources, the San Diego Padres have called future Hall of Famer Albert Pujols with interest in interviewing him for the team's manager position.
All right.
And in terms of like saying there aren't too many guys that would move the needle or get me excited or feel like, okay, this could be different, Albert Pujols is on that list for me.
Only problem there, though, is you're going to have to miss a bunch of time in the middle of one of these years to go to his Hall of Fame induction ceremony.
It's true.
So, which, again, not a bad problem to have.
Yeah, whoever your bench coach is, they fill in for a few days.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. It really is.
And again, going to commanding the clubhouse, you'd think that would be a big, fat, bold, in italics check. With Machado's, Tatis's down the line. Like,
who's going to mouth off to Albert freaking Pujols?
Who's going to mouth off to Albert freaking Pujols? He knows what it's like to be in their situation, if they're slumping or if they're feeling like they're carrying the team, or if Manny's figuring out how to thread the needle between posting every day and taking care of his body, just the frustrations that come with the season. Like, Albert Pujols has experienced it all, and he'll be able to speak to that with all of them, regardless of what comes up. You mentioned just kind of the ins and outs of the game, doing the managerial work. I think that's one where you pay really close attention to what his support staff looks like. And, do you surround him with guys that, like they tried to do it with Jace Tingler, with Kirby and Bobby. Why am I forgetting his name? The old Orioles coaches, the infield coach that came over with Jace Tingler.
I know exactly. He was a first base coach.
Yeah, and then things got messy with
Bobby Dickinson and Bobby Dickerson and Wayne Kirby.
Wayne Kirby, yes. Skip Schumacher was around. That seemed like a case where Jace was, over his skis a little bit. He had these experienced guys that had been around, and they're like, this guy ain't it. Different situation with Albert Pujols because, well, we didn't know who Jace Tingler was when we found out the Padres hired him. We have all known about Albert Pujols for a couple decades now. But I think surrounding him with guys that have been there, that have that experience, that don't necessarily have the managerial aspirations. And it makes me think of, to make a football comparison as a Philadelphia Eagles fan, a guy like Nick Sirianni, who's won a Super Bowl now, but an unproven head coach. We're not sure if this is the guy. His defense, it wasn't his first defensive coordinator, but his defensive coordinator now, Vic Fangio, who seems completely content to be a defensive coordinator, and a darn good one. Jeff Stoutland, offensive line coach. Those two guys, probably the best at what they do in the NFL. Neither one of them appears to have head coaching aspirations. They just want to crush it in their job. And so I think finding somebody like that, if you go with a Molina or a Pujols, having a staff around them that really gets the ins and outs of managing a ball club, game in, game out, day in, day out, but aren't going to be kind of giving them side eye, like, I should be doing that, I should be on the top step. They don't have those aspirations. They just want to be part of it and be an asset to them, where you don't have to worry about any sort of like infighting conflict, the type of thing that popped up with Tingler.
Yeah, Sirianni is a good example because when he has either Shane Steichen or Kellen Moore as his offensive coordinator, he goes to Super Bowls.
He does great.
When he has literally anybody else at offensive coordinator, their offense is not very good.
Yeah.
So it's a point well taken where you get somebody and there's go hire Kevin Long, the Phillies hitting coach, steal him away. That guy's resume is insane when it comes to how quickly he fixes offenses. You get a really, really good hitting coach in there to go along with them, and then let El Hombre be the guy who's in charge. I'm intrigued by this. Again, I'm very intrigued there because it's one of those things where it's like there's literally no track record whatsoever of him as a manager, but the track record of him as a player is almost unparalleled in the history of Major League Baseball. So, like, where does it lie? I remember I had a conversation once with John Elway. Back, I was working in Arizona. It was an Arizona Rattlers game back, like when the Arena Football League was actually like a big thing, and it was showing up on NBC. So he was co-owner of the Colorado Crush, and he was going into the front office before he took over as the general manager of the Broncos. As I was sitting there rapping with him, I'm like, why are you going in the front office? Why aren't you going into coaching? He said, I'd be a terrible coach. I couldn't do it. He says, why do you say that? And he's like, because I'm without sounding too much bravado, I was such an athlete that the things I did on the field, I just did them. I couldn't coach. I couldn't tell someone else how to avoid a rush, stiff arm a lineman, and throw a ball 60 yards on a line downfield to a streaking or a wide receiver. I can't tell someone how to do that. I can just do that. So I can't coach it. Ken Griffey Jr. has a swing from God. He probably wouldn't be a great coach because he just does things that other people just have no idea how they do it. So I'm wondering if Pujols is one of those types of guys who he's just so remarkably gifted and talented that he maybe doesn't understand how to translate that as a coach. Or was he a guy who, remember, he had to go to a junior college before he got drafted. He was overlooked by everybody before the Cardinals finally picked him. So maybe he's a guy who had to grind and understand and refine himself and know the game on such a molecular level that he can teach that to other people. Maybe he's one of those guys. But it's really interesting because he's kind of your ultimate boom or bust candidate, where it's either this guy is going to prove to be one of the best managers in the game, or he understands how to hit a ball. He doesn't understand at all how to call a double steal or when to bring in or how to use a bullpen. There's a lot of minutia that goes on in being a manager.
And I think, for what it's worth, Pujols has managed in the Dominican Winter League and was tapped to be manager of the Dominican WBC team. What year is that? Whenever that rolls back around. And
23,
so,
yeah, but Nelson Cruz was the general manager of that team. So those are ceremonial kinds of things. Mark DeRosa was the manager of the USA team. Let's not put too much in stock into WBC managers.
I'm just saying, and the fact that he did it in the Winter League, so it's not just Jace Tingler. I've managed games in my mind.
I manage a lot of games in my mind.
In my mind,
which works if you're Sherlock Holmes, not so much if you're Jace Tingler.
That's when we knew it was just this wasn't going to work out. So those are interesting. Do you have any others that are of interest to you?
I don't know what Benji Hill has been doing the last 2 years.
That's a good question either. Yeah,
I think he's still with the Mexican national team. Maybe. I wonder if he's a little too far removed from Major League Baseball. I mean, I would have said Austin Hedges, but he just signed a 1-year contract to go back to Cleveland. I remember I'm not joking, the first time I ever talked to Hedgie, he was 20 years old. I was like, that guy's going to be a manager someday. So if he was ready to retire, I would be like, he's the Sean McVay of baseball. Go get him. But not. See, there you go. Younger manager, not too disconnected from the game. Could help motivate our stars to give 100% each game. That just described Austin Hedges to a T, literally in the game this season. But he signed a 1-year contract. He will be a skipper someday, and I will have called it. You heard it here first. It'll probably take like 5 years for him to do it. Other than that, there's just, I don't know. There's going to be somebody else out there who we're not even thinking of, who all of a sudden pops up and becomes like, oh, like we saw Andy Green kind of coming. We saw Mike Shildt kind of coming. We never saw Jace Tingler coming, and we never saw Bob Melvin coming. So what's it going to be this time?
Good question. I would love now thinking about this and doing this exercise, like if you had a top 3 candidate list that shook out to Bochy, which I'm skeptical of the two sides see each other as a fit.
Yeah,
but
no, we're
Bochy,
not talking about what's actually going to happen. We're talking about what we want to happen when it comes to Bruce Bochy.
Yeah. Bochy, Niebla, Pujols. That to me is a very intriguing 1, 2, 3.
I like that. I would probably go Bochy, Niebla, and Albernaz.
Mm-hmm.
I really like that idea. With probably with Friar and then Pujols coming up the 4th and 5th.
And you mentioned Kevin Long. Maybe you had brought him up after Tingler, after that went the way it did, after they fired Tingler, because they hired him in 2021.
2021 season, yeah.
Or maybe it was after, Bob Melvin a couple years later. But I remember talking about Kevin Long. But I don't remember if that was like the reports of an interview, or if that was just because we've talked about Mark Prior. Maybe it was just kind of speculation in terms of guys that might be a fit, and Kevin Long being one of them. And it was probably after Bob Melvin when they had the Ryan Flaherty offense coordinator year and things were a disaster. And one of us, was probably you, mentioned Kevin Long as hey, this guy might be able to fix that.
Yeah. And by the way, he took over, real quick, because I just looked up his resume. He took over the Yankees 08. The next year they won the World Series. 07, 2 years later, they won the World Series. Moved to the Mets in 15. They went to the World Series. Went to the Nationals in 18. 2 years later, they won the World Series. Went to the Phillies in 22. They went to the World Series. And by the way, all those top 5 offenses. So I know he gets a bad rap for teams his team not slugging very well in the postseason. I will take my chances with a team that has a great approach over 162 games, and then see if they can carry it over into the short season, because we've seen so many long lulls of Padres offensive inconsistency. Long as a guy I think can really fix it. Or go get Adrian freaking Gonzalez, like I've been telling you guys to for the last how many years, Darnay?
I think as long as we've been doing this podcast.
See, thank you. And he was even retired at that point.
You got something on the web, right? Or coming on the web soon?
I will be soon, yes.
You want to tease it for us?
Albert Pujols, by the way, was a guy I had on there. So
there you go. We know Pujols is on there. We know Bochy's on there, and I'm sure we'll leave the rest for folks to go check it out.
I likes it.
Off we go. We're doing it again.
God, can we make this one fast? I don't want to have to go through this. They talk to this guy, and they talk to this guy, and they talk to this guy. This is know who you want and go get them. Don't overthink this.
It reminds me of a Mike Shildt line that always seems to come up in the spring training. We want to go fast, but we want to go slow, and we want to go deep. Maybe that'll be
which can be applied to many other endeavors in life.
Padres 2025 managerial search. Thanks, everybody. We'll catch you next week.
Good God.